Welcome back for a special New Year's edition of, I guess you could call it, The World This Year. 366 days to come here in 2012. 4 guests, 1 hour. And we're joined by Christopher Dickey of Newsweek magazine and the Daily Beast. Aude Baron of Le Plus, Le Nouvel Obs, of the Nouvel Observateur, citizens journalist website or supplement as well. Do you have a print medium as well?
Well, we have 2 pages in the magazine every week.
Okay, there you go. Patrick Smith of the Africa Report and Stephen Erlinger of the New York Times. Welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing about the sort of diffuse sort of way that this Occupy Wall Street movement, they know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want specifically. And the question is, as we head now towards this already seems very intricate and complicated thing called the primaries and the presidential election in the United States, we see that the internet, we talked about how it was used in 2008. How will it be used in 2012?
Well, what was interesting in 2008 is that Obama was clearly in front of the others because Republicans weren't on the internet. They were just, passive. In 2012, both sides are on the internet because you just have to be there. There will be a campaign and it has already started. But what you have to look at when you look at on the internet, and especially when you look at the videos, which are a great weapon for attacking one or the other side, is that the web users are attacking Republicans, which is quite classical because web users who express themselves, most of them are supporting Democrats. But the web users, they don't defend Obama as they did in 2007 or 2008 during the campaign, as if Obama was the winner, but for not many reasons, just a winner by default. Whereas on the Republican side, you have, with when you look at Herman Cain, Michelle Bachmann, or Rick Perry, who is, like the king of the internet because people are making fun at him.
People are making fun of Rick Perry. He had a bit of a meltdown during one of those presidential election debates. Maybe we can take a look at it.
Commerce, education, and the, what's the third one there? Let's see.
You need 5.
Oh, 5, okay. So commerce, education, and the
EPA?
EPA, there you go. No, okay.
Let's stop deposition.
Seriously? Is EPA the one you were talking about? Or?
No, sir. No, sir. We were talking about the agencies of government. EPA needs to be rebuilt. There's no doubt about that.
But you can't name the third one?
The third agency of government,
yeah.
I would do away with the education, the commerce, and let's see. I can't. The third one I can't. Sorry. Oops.
Patrick Smith, I could see you whinging a little there.
Yes, it's tough. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy, really. Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that the power of this. That YouTube video was all over the world within minutes, and I think that's what they're up against. I think it is going to be interesting with this election coming up in the States because you've got the Tea Party, which is likely not to have much faith in the mainstream Republican candidate, and its left-wing equivalent, the Occupy Wall Street, isn't going to have much faith in Obama by all accounts. So you're going to have a sort of virtual election going on with the sort of the activists on both sides saying, well, actually, we don't really think the establishment candidates are up to it. So there's going to be an inner election, which may be a smaller turnout. So it's going with a lot of sort of noises off. So I think it's going to be a rather unique one, but also I think a very negative one. I have to say, I think the Obama mantra seems to be, yes, I haven't done everything I promised to do. Give me another chance, and I'm going to do my best. And certainly the people I'm up against are going to do far worse than me. Whether it's Romney or Gingrich, it's hardly an inspiring message, unfortunately.
All right.
No, its essential message is, look at the mess I inherited. Can you think back 4 years to what we got 4 years ago? 4 years is not a lot of time to try and fix it.
I've made some progress, but not as much as I hoped.
I think that's actually a valid argument. But I'm not sure people will respond to it in the United States.
And if the United States follows the trend that's been going on this side of the Atlantic, Barack Obama may have reason to worry. 2011 was not exactly kind to Eurozone incumbents. Let's see, there's Brian Cowen, a historic rout for his party in Ireland. José Socrates in Portugal, he called snap elections back in March. That didn't go too well. Over in Greece, well, let's not go there. George Papandreou having to bow out after an attempt to stage a referendum on belt tightening. In Spain, it was the left's José Luis Zapatero, and even Silvio Berlusconi was forced out at the polls. A bad year for those incumbents and others. Berlusconi, it's interesting because Italy, when I was a kid, was a sort of a joke that there was always political instability in Italy. But when he left, there was a genuine surprise. People thought he would never go away.
Well, maybe people thought he would never go away, but they thought one day, he would finally leave. And it was a great surprise and a great relief for most of the population. But we talk with an external point of view, and when you look especially at the blogs in Italy, and people were supporting him because he was human, and it's really an argument that you can see over the blog. He wasn't perfect, he has failures, but he was human, and he wasn't a robot, and that's why maybe people, were attached to him, and there was kind of a link of affection between Berlusconi and the population.
How do you weather the storm when there is an economic crisis? Do you want strong leadership, or do you want someone who's one of the guys, more of a populist message?
Well, I think what we're seeing now is that, for example, in France, Nicolas Sarkozy came in with this message of reform and change. He was going to be the French Margaret Thatcher after a sex change. He's quite the reverse now. He's talking about protection and saving the French economy. And I think people move to become more conservative. They say that I will protect you. I'm not the radical figure for change. And that's partly the problem in the European Union at the moment. No one's prepared to enunciate and push forward a message of radical change. We can't go on with business as usual. Everyone wants to say, let's go back to the prosperity we remember 10, 15 years ago.
Stephen Erlanger, when you cover those summits in Brussels, everyone's saying, we need more leadership, we need more leadership. Are they stepping up to the plate?
Well, I don't think they are. I think they seem to lack the imagination to understand the depth of the problem. Also, who would run...
And necessity's not the mother of invention.
Well, but who would run a railroad like this? All-night meetings? Is this college? This is ridiculous. This doesn't feel very professional, very serious. But it's worth saying...
They're planning on doing it once a month.
Well, but the euro is a prison for politics also. This is the thing that is most obvious. They can't act the way they used to act. They can't do what they want to do because they're under market pressure, they're under collective pressure. Nicolas Sarkozy has promised to cut the deficit to X amount, right? This year, next year. The economy is declining. The amount of debt as a percentage of GDP, if GDP is falling, goes up. So he has to keep cutting. It's terribly unpopular. He has no freedom in this because otherwise he'll get killed by the markets. So I think there's actually a big fundamental change in democracy that this crisis is showing us. First, there's the democratic deficit of Brussels itself, and there's also the collective pressure, even without political union, on what it is to be a sovereign leader.
Sovereignty, definitely an issue. We know that Silvio Berlusconi's successor was not elected. We know that's the case as well in places like Greece. There's a real crisis of legitimacy, as Stephen Erlanger was mentioning.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I think Steve really put his finger on several points. Looking forward, I think we'll really see in the next few months the test of the technocrats. The idea that you put in these technocrats to make people be more austere, to give up, to make sacrifices, that's a job for political leadership, not for guys who can master arithmetic. It's not like the numbers are a big mystery here. You laid them out perfectly well, Steve. This is going to be a really tough time, and people need to be inspired. And there is not on the European scene right now a single inspiring leader. And that is a real problem because it takes inspiration to make people sacrifice, and I just don't see that anybody can deliver that.
I mean, who's inspiring in Brussels? Barroso, Herman Van Rompuy. I mean, Angela Merkel's like a physicist. She's very intelligent, blah blah blah. But I mean, hasn't given an inspirational speech in her entire life if it weren't about the fall of communism. Monti is a brilliant technocrat and academic. I think there really is a failure of political imagination, but part of it has to do with the incredible cauldron that the markets have created on pressure on the euro.
Let's pick up on that point and talk about style with the specific case coming up in this country of the French presidential elections, second round scheduled for early May. Now, the French president has been told over his 5-year mandate to tone it down, to appear more regalian, above the fray, if you will. But he's still a take-charge kind of guy, as he proved the day he became the first sitting French president to have a baby. He went to the clinic, then jetted off to Germany with a meeting with Angela Merkel. Sort of the idea crises demand leaders. And you look at Nicolas Sarkozy's style. He seems to thrive in a crisis. Perhaps this isn't so bad for him after all.
Well, the problem of Nicolas Sarkozy is that he made great mistake at the beginning of his presidency, and people just didn't forget it. And every 6 months, Nicolas Sarkozy comes back and say, "I've changed, and I'm a new man." But people are just fed up with it. And
what are those mistakes? Spell it out for us.
Well, at the beginning of his presidency, it was just image mistakes. When just after his winning, he went to a quite, famous restaurant, which is called Le Fouquet's on the Champs-Élysées, which is a very rich avenue, and it's not, good
Coffee
image
costs
for.
€5 there.
It does. Okay, I've never been there, but I know it's very expensive. And then he spent some holidays on a huge yacht, and he just so people they just couldn't recognize themselves into Nicolas Sarkozy. He was just he was showing that he was rich to everyone. Even he wasn't that rich because it's his friends who are rich. But so there was a kind of a disconnection between the president and the people.
The French were introduced to the word bling.
Yeah. Look, I mean, the problem, it's not even bling with Sarkozy. I mean, the cliche you hear from everybody here in France is that the problem is not what he does, it's who he is. It's the sense of the personality of the guy. And he really comes across to the French people as if he were a little mafioso. I mean, I was once watching him standing next to President Obama, who he doesn't like very much. And Obama's tall and elegant and composed. He looks sort of like Denzel Washington. And there's Sarkozy next to him, twitching and flinching, and he looked like Joe Pesci. And it was just horrible. And if you are a French person used to, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, people with the literal and political stature of Chirac or Giscard or de Gaulle, and then you look at Sarkozy, well, he just doesn't measure up.
All right, let's look at his message, because that's important too, not just his look. And Nicolas Sarkozy, a few days ago, gave a pre-campaign speech. He hasn't officially declared his intention to run. This was in the southern French city of Toulon. And he threw down the gauntlet to the left in the remarks he made.
It has to be said without the slightest hint of provocation, but because it's the truth. Retirement at age 60 and the 35-hour workweek were serious mistakes that today we're paying for dearly and that we need to repair.
Patrick Smith, what's interesting is we mentioned the Indignados, we mentioned Occupy Wall Street. Nicolas Sarkozy saying to the socialists, basically challenging the labor movement, challenging the socialists. Why are you surprised as an outsider? France is sort of known for industrial action.
Well, it's a weird argument. I mean, the socialists have been out of power for 2 decades, and you're saying that the reason why we've got a crisis in the Eurozone is because of the 35-hour work week, because of socialist, trade unionist, restrictive practices. I don't think that's really going to be an argument that's going to appeal to the French voters.
But they haven't risen much to the bait.
Not yet. No, I mean, I think partly. I mean, Sarkozy's great advantage is probably François Hollande. He doesn't have the socialist candidate. He doesn't have a strong opponent. I mean, François, in my view, François Hollande had to do more than simply not be Nicolas Sarkozy. He has to really lay down an agenda that's very different and that people can identify with to justify getting back into power after the long interregnum.
I think he has lots of time to do that, frankly. I think Hollande has played it very carefully. He has a party that doesn't really like him very much. He has a big hard line in his party. He's been vague about many issues. He's already suffered by listening too much to the Greens, for instance. I think the more he shows people he is not Nicolas Sarkozy, the better off he is. I think this is an election of désamour. People are really fed up with Sarkozy, who's a very good politician, by the way. I think it's going to be a very close
so it's still
election.
Still very much up to grabs.
Absolutely.
Before we leave, I want to ask each one of our panelists here, how do we arm ourselves for 2012? Is there a book or a movie that you would recommend? Christopher Dickey.
Animal Farm.
George Orwell's Animal
George Orwell's Animal Farm, because I think as we look at the rise, for instance, of the Islamists in the Middle East, you can learn a lot from Animal Farm because it's the way revolutionaries turn on each other. And for instance, nobody hates the Islamists, the Salafis more than the Muslim Brothers. Nobody hates the Muslim Brothers more than the Salafis.
All right, so get ready for phase 2 of the revolution. Patrick Smith?
Well, yeah, I'm a great Orwell fan myself. Maybe Homage to Catalonia. Or there's a great... when we're talking...
with Paris and London.
Well, yes, especially Paris, in my case. Also, perhaps a bit of light reading. Robert Harris's The Fear Index, which I think is a political thriller about the effects of the financial crisis on an individual based in Switzerland. I think it just explains the financial crisis and the emotions connected with it.
Stephen Erlinger?
Two quick things. One, a book about the world that died in the wars, The Hair with Amber Eyes, which is a wonderful memoir of a rich Jewish banking family that was very popular, very rich, Paris, Vienna, and died in the wars. This is the world we hope we've left behind. And second, John Kenneth Galbraith's The Great Crash of 1929. There are lessons there.
Okay, and Aude Baron.
Well, something much more positive, because we've talked a lot about crisis, about the euro, and about Arabic Spring, and the movie Untouchable, which was released in France a few weeks ago. And it's very positive to see, and it's based on a real story. And to be short, it's a story of a white rich man who is paraplegic, and he's hosting a poor black man, and they're becoming very friends. And it's just optimistic and to try to see positive things.
A movie that's breaking records at the box office. We'll be putting all of those up on our Facebook page. I want to thank you for joining us for this special year-end edition. Thank you to Aude Baron, Stephen Erlinger, Patrick Smith, and Christopher Dickey, and thank you for being with us. And we wish you, from all of us, a happy new year.